The next step in this series that I've been doing here is going to be my first F350 and the first Mustang that I bought. So after I sold my Silverado, I looked around for a little while and decided that I was going to buy another car. I bought a 97 F350 with the 7.3 power stroke in it. It was a 5-speed manual, two-wheel drive, but it was incredibly clean underneath. And this truck, when I bought it, had a little bit of an electrical issue. The gauges didn't work, the odometer wasn't showing, and just a lot of the lights on the interior didn't work. So I went and I looked at this truck and I went and drove it around, and it seemed to be a really solid running, driving truck. It was incredibly clean, looked like it had been a Southern truck. So I went ahead and brought it home. And once I got it home, I started looking through the electrical issues, figured out there was a loose ground wire and a couple fuses that had blown because of it. So once I replaced the fuses and got everything back to where it was supposed to be, the odometer only showed 68,000 miles on this truck, which was incredibly low. So I looked at the Carfax based on the VIN number, and it seemed to be accurate. This truck had been owned by a shipping company when it was new. The shipping company bought it, they put a flatbed on it, and they just used it to move stuff around their shipping yard. So it probably had a lot of engine hours, but not a lot of driving miles. And if you looked underneath the truck, and I'll show a picture here of the engine bay too, it was incredibly clean and well taken care of for as old as it is. So I bought this truck for $1,800, I believe. And after I fixed it up and realized that it had such low miles, I was like, wow, this is just a steal of a find. So I had the windows tinted. I put a light bar on the roof for long distance country road driving because I took it out in back roads a lot. And eventually decided, you know what? Something like this needs to go to somebody that's going to use it as a workhorse a lot more than I am. It was worth a lot of money as low miles as it was. So I ended up turning around and I sold that truck for $3,600 with the mileage. And I purchased and printed the Carfax, so I was able to show the person buying it from me, hey, look, this is where this truck has been. The mileage seems to be fairly accurate on this truck. It doesn't seem like the gauge cluster has been replaced or anything. It doesn't seem like it's been rolled back or programmed. And they were happy to buy it. They really liked the truck and were happy to pay what I was asking for it. At the end of owning the F350, I bought a 95 Mustang GT. And 95, if for those of you that aren't aware, it was the last year of the 5-liter V8. And it had a 5-speed manual. And this car showed up on Craigslist for $700. I ran out and looked at this car probably 10 minutes after the guy posted the ad. I just happened to run across it. It's like, there's no way there's going to be this running, driving car for this low of a price, especially something like a GT Mustang that a lot of people seem to like. So I ran out and looked at it, and the body was in really bad shape. It looked like it had been dinged up, nicked. The car had slid into some stuff just from like reckless driving or things falling on it. And on top of that, the car had been sitting in a field for probably 5 or 6 years. So I went and we put new gas in it and fired it up, and it fired up like it had just been driven yesterday. Of course, it had some smoke from clearing out some of the carbon buildup from just sitting, and we had to tow it out of the field that it was sitting in. But we got in the car. I took it through a couple of the gears. It would grind in second gear sometimes, and the tires were just awful dry rotted, but it didn't have any engine codes, and it seemed to run really healthy. So I bought the car for $500. I talked the guy down a little bit, and he was in a really tight spot. He was actually selling it because his house was being foreclosed upon, and he had forgotten all about the car, and he just wanted to get rid of it real fast. So I picked it up and I brought it home, and And a friend of mine is actually like an expert in these 5-liter engines. He has a Fox body Mustang that he's rebuilt a couple times over, and he came and looked it over and drove it around. And just when he was talking about how solid of a car it felt like, the throwout bearing went bad. And the throwout bearing is something you have to pull the transmission to replace. And since second gear was bad, I shopped around a little bit and I actually found a transmission out of a one-owner car for $300, I think it was. I went to go look at it. I talked the guy down to $250, which I'm surprised he talked down at all. And he actually gave me a little box of parts and said, I don't know what these are. They were in the car that I had, and you can just take them. I don't have this car anymore. You came all this way. I was like, cool, I'll take the parts. I get home, start looking through this box, and one of the parts that was in there was a BBK fuel pressure regulator, which is probably a $150 part by itself. Not to mention I now have this one-owner transmission that I'm about to put into my car. So me and a friend took my car the same day, got a new throwout bearing, put it on jack stands and ramps at a parking garage at the apartment he was living at, and changed the transmission that day, the same day, and got the car back on the road, back driving by about 8 o'clock that evening, which is one of the fastest, biggest jobs that I think I've ever done. So once we got the new transmission in, we're driving around that evening. Everything just seemed perfect. So I got, before we drove it around, I bought a secondhand set of wheels and tires. And a couple days later, I went out on some private roads and was drag racing some of my buddies. Got the car up to a little over 130, around 140 is what the speedometer said, given that it was accurate. And it was dead solid, didn't feel like it had any issues going through any of the gears, full throttle, the engine seemed super healthy. So I actually decided that I was going to do forced induction on this car, make a speed project out of it. It's the first sports car I'd ever owned, first muscle car I'd ever owned. I'm actually still currently in the middle of doing a twin turbo build on this car, which I'll make a separate video on that to kind of explain where the car is, what I've been going through, what to consider if you're going to turbo a car. And I actually pieced together the kit instead of buying a pre-made kit, so I can talk about all the little things that you might not think of when you're just piecing stuff together. But I still have this car, so I haven't sold this one. I made enough profit on the F350 that I was able to continue doing this similar style thing that I've been going through. But I think that's going to wrap up this video. I'm trying to not make these super long so that they're not impossible to watch through. The next video, I'll be talking about the Jeep that I've had, one that I actually really, really loved, a 75 CJ. So stay tuned for that video. Thanks for watching. Like always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments or send me a message.